start by closing our eyes. I'm closing my eyes too, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable like you're all sitting with your eyes closed and I'm staring at you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up our breath. This is not a breathwork session. It's not primarily about the breath per se, but breath is the language of our nervous system. You can tell a huge amount about what someone is doing, what state of mind they're in, where they're at, just by hearing the way they breathe. Hearing someone's breath can tell you a lot about what they're up to. And it works both ways, because our body will breathe differently in different circumstances, and the same way that those circumstances or the state that our body's in will produce particular patterns of breath, it works in the reverse, that when we breathe in a particular way that's associated with a particular state of being, it gives the body the message that that's the state we're in, and it can help the body move into that state of being. So I want to start just by setting up our breath, breathing in through the nose, long, deep, slow breaths. To be clear, I would say the longer, the slower, and the deeper, the better. Deep doesn't mean how strong it is. Deep means literally deep, pulling the breath in all the way down, deep, 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 deep down, breathing down into our bellies. And the longer the better, the slower the better, and the deeper the better. But most importantly, we don't want to be pushing ourselves, pushing the breath to be longer than feels comfortable, deeper than feels comfortable, or slower than feels comfortable. So the number one priority is that the breath should be gentle. It should be gentle on ourselves, and we want it to be gently slow and gently deep and gently long. In through the nose, long, slow, deep, gentle breaths, and out through the nose or mouth, whatever's more comfortable, whatever feels right. But just taking a few breaths deep, deep down into the belly. And with breathing like this, when we're not used to it, it can feel hard to take long, slow, deep breaths. It can feel uncomfortable. Don't push it, just be gentle. And when someone engages in this practice like this regularly, they'll find that quite quickly they will naturally find themselves taking breaths that are longer, substantially longer, and substantially deeper, and substantially slower. But you want your body to get there on its own. You don't want to push it. It should be gentle. Because a big part of what this does is, this is the way, how does a person breathing like this, a person breathes like this when they're asleep, very relaxed, very calm, all of which are situations in which the body is generally supposed to be safe. So breathing this way just tells the body that it's safe, we can focus on what's inside, we can relax, we don't have to be tense, don't have to be running anywhere. I just want to continue taking long, deep, slow, gentle breaths. And as we continue breathing, I want to just pay attention, feel the chair underneath. Just notice the sensation of the chair pushing up, holding us up. We're sitting on the chair, it's holding up our weight, and notice the sensation at the surface of contact where our body meets the chair. Long, slow, deep, gentle breaths in through the nose, deep, slow and gentle. Notice the feeling of the floor, our feet resting on the floor pushing up against our feet, holding us up. Continue breathing long, slow, deep, gentle breaths in through the nose. As deep as it feels comfortable. The deeper the better, but not to the point that it's forcing or pushing. Now, pay attention to your head, the top of your head, the crown of your head. See if you feel any sensations, any tension, the back of the head, sides of the head, and if you feel any, first of all, just notice. See if you can feel the sensations that your skin feels at the top of your head, sides and back of your head. If you feel any tension in or beneath the skin, see if you can just let it go. And if it doesn't just let go, it's fine. Don't fight it, just notice it. And if you can just let it go, it's a good idea. Now the forehead, just notice the skin of your forehead, the muscles beneath the skin, nose, cheeks. What do they all feel like? Do you feel any tension? If there's tension, see if you could just let it go. But again, don't work too hard. Sometimes just noticing it and letting go is all it takes. And if that doesn't work, just leave it. Notice your mouth. Feel the breath going in through your nose, down your throat. Feel the breath in your lungs. Notice your neck, your shoulders. Can you feel the sensation in your skin where your skin meets the air? Do you feel anything beneath that, any tension? And if you do, see if you can just let it go. Again, don't try to force it away, don't work too hard, but if you can just let it go, do. Now, move our attention and focus inside the body, inside the chest, inside the abdomen, belly, tummy. Do you notice any sensations inside? And this is something that doing it at first, for the first time, the first few times, it can take a few minutes to be able to connect and find any sensations inside, but there are sensations in there. And I'm not going to spend 15 minutes on it, which I would love to, and maybe we'll find a time to do that another time, but we're not going to get any material done today if we do. Just see, do you notice any sensations? Any sensations inside your throat, inside your chest? Tightness, warmth, cold, knots, shaking, tension, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And there are no better or worse sensations. There's no right or wrong. They are what they are. They're objective. And if you notice any sensations in your body, in your chest, in your abdomen, in your belly, just stay focused on them, notice them. Pay attention. See them, hear them. And be aware as we continue to breathe. That if that sensation is there, Hashem doesn't make mistakes. It's supposed to be there. It's there for a reason, it has a job, and it's exactly where it's supposed to be, doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. More long, slow, deep, gentle breaths down into the belly, as long and slow as it can be while still being gentle. And when you're ready, Slowly, gently open your eyes without moving your body. Just slowly move your eyes around the room. You don't have to move your head. Just look around the room. Remind your body where we are, the space we're in. Up, down, around the room. Notice the colors, the walls, the shape of the room. Who feels a little bit more present? Okay. Now, we do that before davening, especially davening. It's incredibly powerful to do it before learning also, but with davening, particularly because davening is supposed to be a sensory, emotional experience, an experience of feeling emotion towards Hashem, feeling attachment to Hashem. Now, the presencing and safety part of that exercise is extremely powerful for learning as well. But learning ultimately is primarily something we do with our heads. But davening is supposed to be, it's about the feelings, it's about the experience. And the more that our nervous system has the message that it's safe, and it can be slow and it doesn't have to be running or distracted and looking around, and the more present we are, present in our bodies, present in the sensations and feelings that are in our bodies, the better position we're going to be in to experience emotions which ultimately are sensations of sorts towards Hashem, to be present in the davening, to connect, etc. And coming to the place where we're going to daven 5 or 10 minutes earlier to do something like this can make let's say if a person's going to be spending, whether it's 20 minutes or an hour davening, but spending 5 or 10 minutes on something like this before starting can make that 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 60 minutes probably literally 100 times more effective. So, and I would say honestly, and it's not just something I would say, I do this. I wouldn't say all the time, I wish I did, but sometimes even if I know that I have a deadline for when I have to be done davening and I wish I had more time to daven, so which means that the time's already limited, it will almost always still be worth it to take, whether it's 60 seconds or 3 minutes or 5 minutes to do something like this, because even though you end up with a little bit less time, but the time that you have can be double, triple, 5, 10, 50 times more impactful and more effective. And it's almost always worth it.
What if you're limited in time, and you take 60 seconds and you know that there's a deeper set, like there's something, something stopping you from like truly like being in touch. Like there's a barrier of like, I can't go too into it because there's a lot going on in my mind right now. So you don't want to like get too into that mode. Then what would you do?
Okay, that's a really good question. I would say a few things. First of all, where to start?
Telling yourself you're going to do it another time, like, is then like a barrier of like, oh, that one time you tried to do it, you weren't able to do it. You know, like that's already like a demotivating thing.
Yes. So when I was talking about when you find the sensation and just accept it, know that it's there, it's supposed to be there, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, Hashem doesn't make any mistakes. That's also true of the state we're in more broadly. And that skill of accepting that if this is the way it is, this is the way it's supposed to be, is honestly probably the most valuable skill in terms of mental and emotional health and well-being, in terms of true integrated spiritual development. As long as we are on the opposite team of ourselves, and ourselves includes our body, it includes our nervous system, it includes our sensations, it includes our feelings, it includes our experiences, etc. As if our conscious mind is not on the same team as those other parts of ourselves, then both of those parts are spending energy opposing each other and trying to protect themselves from each other, which takes away energy and presence and bandwidth from everything else.
What do you mean? Did you go wrong with that?
I mean, I can't connect. I'm too frazzled. I'm too dissociated. Right? So what that means is that there is a state in my body which is dissociated, which is not as present as I wish it would be. My conscious mind, my prefrontal cortex, has a position that is opposed to that and wishes that that weren't the case, which does several things. It means that our frontal cortex is spending energy worrying about that and opposing it. That place in our body, and when we're dissociated, it's something that our body, our nervous system is doing for a reason. Our conscious mind might not want it to be that way, but if it is, it is, and our body's doing it for a reason. If our conscious mind is going to fight against that, that part of our nervous system that's there doing that to protect us somehow is just going to fight back. It's going to feel like it needs to protect us even more because it's being attacked. And all that does is make everything worse. This acceptance, and just to be clear, I may have touched on, I think I did touch on this last week. People often push back against acceptance because they misunderstand what it means. And there's good reason for that, because a lot of people preach acceptance, and what they're preaching is not actually what the word acceptance means in the literature. Acceptance, let's say, right, the context probably where it's the most contentious and gets the most pushback is, let's say, when a parent is accepting a child's emotion. So some people, and this is where people will often push back and get upset at, will confuse what, let's say, would be broadly or loosely referred to as gentle parenting, which really I think probably a better way of putting, or what it's supposed to be, is maybe connected parenting. And people think that that necessarily means permissive parenting, which it doesn't have to do at all. You can have very clear, strong boundaries in place. Accepting the child's emotion doesn't mean, oh, this child is angry, therefore whatever they do is fine. That's accepting behavior, that's not accepting an emotion. Accepting an emotion means, this child is very angry right now. It's accepting the emotion means accepting the emotion, period. Nothing more, nothing less. Exactly that, accepting the emotion. Now, an emotion is a neurological phenomenon that exists inside the person. So, and it's something that our nervous system is doing for a reason. So when we don't accept the emotion, the part of our nervous system that's producing that emotion to try to tell us something feels like it needs to protect itself and it needs to scream even louder. And then what happens is maybe we suppress it or we move away and we run away from it, but it's still there and it's just going to be trying to scream louder and louder and louder and louder until it feels like it did its job and it was heard. So accepting an emotion doesn't indicate anything in terms of behavior. It doesn't mean it's okay to behave in any way or it's not okay to behave in any way. Accepting an emotion doesn't have anything to do with behavior. It's about the emotion, not about the behavior. Accepting the emotion or accepting a state of dissociation, when a person says, you know what, I'm feeling really dissociated. Now, a lot of times the natural response is, oh, I'm trying to become present and to tune into my body and all of these things and to slow down, and I can't do it, I'm too dissociated. Oh no. But the dissociation is a feature of something that our body and our nervous system is producing the same way that it's producing the emotion. And when we accept that, then that allows all the different neurological phenomena to be able to settle down rather than feel like they need to push back harder.
So let's say you could really go.
Yeah. No, go.
Let's say you really know that you could pull yourself into a specific kind of a specific train of thought that you quite enjoy and that you feel is an incredible way of connecting with Hashem, or an incredible way of meditating before you start davening. But all your mind, in order to get to that level, sometimes it will take you a lot of time sometimes like, you know, right before you go to sleep, like this is something you can think about. You have such an easy time to like think about like, I don't know, all the things you're grateful for, or the things that like a specific kind of avoider or whatever it is. But then in the moment you want to be on that level because you know that that's like where you walk away feeling so amazing. But at that moment you're thinking about something completely different. You're thinking of another part of Hashem, like you're thinking of something else. Does that mean that it's better to focus, but it doesn't feel as deep or doesn't feel as productive? Maybe that's the Yitzhara thing, or the Yitzhara telling you, oh, this isn't productive, so like don't focus on what the brain's telling you. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm not sure there's a black and white answer to that. And I think that sometimes, because one of the skills that's, you know, important for becoming present is is directing our attention, right, and directing our focus. And sometimes, very often, especially for a person who finds being present uncomfortable, which most people do to varying degrees, some people's bodies are literally terrified of it. And so all of a sudden the brain gets terrified of all the things it's going to feel when the person becomes present, and all of a sudden all these thoughts come up and things that are urgent and important, and what about this idea, and what about, I'm trying to think about this part of Hashem, what about that idea and that thing I learned. Sometimes it can be perhaps, let's say, ideal, at least hypothetically, to bring our thought back. Sometimes what that means is that there's a part of our brain that's been wondering about this and wants to process it, and our brains know what they're doing, and maybe we should give that thought some space. What I would say is that as a person practices this more and more and becomes more comfortable being present and more in tune with their body and more familiar, and we get to know ourselves and our bodies and these parts of our experiences better, a person can become intuitive and can pick up on, you know what, I think this is something that I should dwell on and focus on even though it wasn't the plan. Or, this is my mind racing, let me try to bring it back. Going back to your original question, right, I think there were actually two things there, right? One was just about racing and what if I can't tune in? And then another thing you said is, what if I can't become present because I know that there's too much going on, right? Now, that's probably true for maybe everyone, if not definitely most people, right? That being extremely present is scary. And we don't realize how scary it is until we try to do it, and all of a sudden our mind wanders off to all the urgent things. Because the reason that we're almost all not present is because being present comes with a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of discomfort in life, and if we're just not present in our bodies, then we only feel 3% of the discomfort, and feeling 50, 80, 100% of the discomfort is extremely uncomfortable. The fact that there's a lot there, yes, it might mean that if I have to daven now and I can afford to spend 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and I'm in shul, and this is not the place to start, you know, doing this deep exploration of all of this stuff, maybe it's not the time and place to, I would say maybe it's the time and place to, probably still always, I would guess it's a good idea to become present almost always if you can, but to do it cautiously and to not dig too deep, perhaps, something like that. I need to explore that a bit more. But what that does mean is that it's all the more important to find some time and a space and support, someone who could, because the support's very important for two reasons. Number one is just to keep us on track and to guide us, because it's very hard to stay on track. And having someone, people who've been doing this, I heard someone speaking recently, someone who runs workshops and has been, you know, doing, it was more about like a much more aggressive breath work and stuff like that, but he's been doing it for 10 years, does it every single day, and he still once a week has a session, spends a half a day with his breathwork chavrosa, and they spend a couple hours each leading each other and being there to guide, not because they don't know what to do, but because when you want to put your energy into being present and to connecting, it's much easier to do that if you don't also have to spend energy on thinking, what should I be doing now? When you have someone who's just leading you through, and you can let go of everything and just respond to the prompts. So having someone who can guide that. And also another thing that's extremely important, that's very underrated or underappreciated, is the value of another person being present. Just our bodies feel the support of another person. When there's another person around, our bodies, it's safer. It's always safer to be in the presence of another person. It's protection against all kinds of things. So our bodies naturally our nervous systems are gonna feel more comfortable to let go because it feels more safe when there's another person with us. So having someone who's present, even if they're just sitting there quietly, but certainly if they can help lead and guide and prompt, and to be there to support, so that when it gets a lot, they can just, remind the person and say, if this feels a lot, keep breathing, and know that it's okay. And maybe sometimes part of the process might be to find a resource, a part of your body or a thought or a memory that feels really warm and comfortable and safe, and you go back and forth. And when it gets a lot, you go back there a little, and then you can continue. But if the greater the extent to which it feels overwhelming and intimidating to become present, the greater the value and benefit of doing it. Because until people try it, they have no idea of how much depth and beauty the life has to offer when a person can be present. Most people don't even realize how absent they are from their own lives and their own bodies and their own experiences. Now, in my defense, this actually, and I wasn't anticipating this at all when I started doing it, I didn't even realize, I did it just because we talked about it last week, the extent to which this is actually the perfect, the quintessential expression of exactly what we're talking about in today's class, actually. So, excuse me. This week's Parsha is Parshas Haazinu. We're going to read it after Rosh Hashanah. It feels like, what do you mean? It's Rosh Hashanah, it's not Haazinu, right? Yes, Rosh Hashanah is a big one, but Rosh Hashanah will be followed by Shabbos. We're going to read Parshas Haazinu. So it opens up Parshas Haazinu. It says, Haazinu Hashamayim. It's Moshe Rabbeinu talking to the Jewish people. Haazinu Hashamayim, V'adavera, V'sishma Haaretz Imrei Fi. Haazinu and Sishma are very similar words, and basically what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying is, he's saying, listen, O heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, O land, the speaking of my mouth. And Moshe Rabbeinu, ultimately what he's doing here, this is right before the Jewish people are going into the land of Israel, and Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to be going with them because he doesn't get to go into Eretz Yisrael. So he's leaving them his parting words, his parting message, which is part reprimand, part praise, part motivation. I mean, all of it ultimately is for the sake of motivation. It's preparing for things that they should anticipate and be ready for, some challenges that will come up, etc. So this is, in a sense, almost like Moshe Rabbeinu's will and testament to his flock, to the people who he dedicated everything to. And he is here calling on the heavens and the earth to be witnesses. Halachically, anything that halachically requires witnesses requires two witnesses. There is such a thing as a single witness in halacha, but it's not evidence. It's just a thing that can require someone to take an oath or something like that. But Beis Din will never accept as definitive evidence of one person. There have to be two witnesses. So Moshe Rabbeinu calls on these two eternal witnesses that are always going to be there. They were there when Hashem gave us the Torah. They were there when we accepted it. And they're always going to be here. So these are the perfect witnesses in a sense. We notice that there are two different verbs here. And there's another time when Yehoshua, Joshua, Moshe's disciple, the one who took over Moshe Rabbeinu and led us into the land of Israel, says something very similar, but he uses the word, he does swap. So he used the word sishma. I don't remember the exact words. Is it tashmi? It's definitely ha'azini, I think. anyways, the wording is Shomayim. He uses this verb of Haazinu for the ground, and this verb of Sishma, hearing, for the heavens. Now, if these are changed, everything is precise and intentional. There's got to be a reason. It is. It's on. Just the screen is flipped up. Yeah, this is the screen there. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Because if it hadn't been recording and I'd wanted it to, it would have been good to know. So the difference is, well, first of all, just the words, right? Shema, everyone recognizes Shema, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel. So Shema means to hear, Sishma means you shall hear. And Haazinu, if you have a look at the Shoresh, Aleph, Zayin, Nun, Oizen, ear. And Oizen is ear, Oznaim is ear. So Haazinu means to ear, verb, the verb of ears, i.e. to listen. Now, the words Haazinu and Sishma, the difference, hearing, generally, we can hear things from a distance. You can hear about something that's very removed from yourself. Haazinu means to listen to the sound itself, to the thing itself, which indicates or implies that it's close by and you can actually hear the sound. So now, when it comes to Moshe versus Yeshua, Moshe was a prophet, Yeshua was a prophet. There is a categorical difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and all the other prophets. Obviously, every prophet is unique and individual, but there's a sense in which Moshe Rabbeinu is in one category, and relative to that, all the other prophets are in a separate category together, separate to Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is because the depth of Moshe's connection and awareness and experience was in a whole different category. And this is why Rambam, among others, talk about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Nisnaba Bezeh. Moshe Rabbeinu, in generally, when you look through the prophets, you read of prophecies, and obviously the Nevi'im, the prophets are full of them. It very often you'll see Koi Amar Hashem, or say so said Hashem. Koi, so, or such, i.e. like this. Moshe Rabbeinu is the only prophet ever who uses the word zeh in giving over his prophecies. What's the difference? If I am talking about this marker, I can say this marker. If I'm talking about a marker other than this one, I could say a marker that is like this. Such a marker. People would say it's not a very correct English, but a marker just like this. A marker like so, like this one. Because all the other prophets, like every person, right, we cannot see spirituality, divinity, Hashem, godliness. It's real, but our awareness is so limited that the most we can do is understand things about it, become more aware of it. So it's always going to be that thing. We can never point to divinity and say this because we can't point to it. It's not something that we have, we can't see it, we can't hear it, we can't feel it or taste it or smell it, so we can't say this. We can say such, so, koi. Moshe Rabbeinu actually saw divinity in a way that no one else ever did. And so he was able to say this because it was there, it was in front of him. Moshe Rabbeinu, so let's just take a minute to talk about the words Shamayim and Oros. So Shamayim means...
Where it says this? Just where?
Says what?
Where? What?
Where it says what?
Where it says this, zeh.
Oh.
Where it says it.
Zeh Keli Vanveo in Oz Yoshir. That's one example that comes to mind. Zeh Keli Vanveo Elokei Avivarei Memenu in Oz Yoshir. Right, he's saying this. No other Novi ever says this about Hashem. They say koi, or other similar words. So, Shamayim, what does the word Shamayim mean? Sky, right? Or Bereshis bar Hashem, Bereshis bar Elokim es Hashamayim, in the beginning of Hashem creating the heavens and the earth. Heavens literally means sky. If there was a way to track, I mean, I'm sure that, the NSA or whoever has the data, if we could get hold of it, if we could ask Ed Snowden to lend us the data and do some processing and find out how many times the word heaven is used, what percentage of the times that the word heaven is used in a conversation is it referring to the physical sky? And what percentage of the times that the word heaven is used? If someone just says, oh, heaven, what do we think of? We think of spirituality, of afterlife, of souls in heaven. Now, heaven literally means sky, but the sky outside, the clouds and what we would refer to as the sky, is a metaphor for that which is not physical, as opposed to Oretz, the earth, the ground, which is a very, very strong metaphor for the tangible and the material. How many of us could go through days or weeks without ever thinking about or interacting with let's say, without the sky ever really being a part of our conscious experience at all? We could. The ground, not so much. We walk on it, we feel it with every step. What happens when someone trips and falls? Someone's running and they trip and they go head first or face down into the ground. You're going to be able to see it for a while. You're probably going to be able to hear it from 2 blocks away when it happens, right? It hurts. Why? Because the ground is solid. It's tangible. We can feel it. It's right here. We're close to it. We're on the ground. We're in close contact. We can relate to it. It's here. It's immediate. It's tangible. And that is, as opposed to the sky is not tangible at all. Right, when it's someone who's never been on a plane, especially little kids, they're like, oh, what happens when a plane goes up and then you pass through the clouds? Like, does it bump into the clouds and how does it not damage the plane? It's like, no, it's not the way it works. You fly straight through a cloud and not know about it. You could be in the mountains and you could literally be in a cloud standing on the ground. You don't feel it. You could see it, kind of. Right, the sky is much less tangible for us anytime that we're not in a plane. It's distant. We could go for a long time naturally without thinking about it, without being aware of it. It's no less real, but it is less close, it's less immediate, it's less tangible. So that makes the sky a very good metaphor for the non-physical, the spiritual. It's no less real. The sky is no less real than the ground, and spiritual is no less real than the physical, but it's less immediate to us. It feels more distant. It's intangible. We could go for a long time without thinking about it. So this is why the word heaven is used so frequently as a metaphor for the spiritual that if you say the word heaven, most people, their minds are going to go to spirituality, not to the sky outside, even though it means sky. Because it's such a strong metaphor that that's the primary context in which the word is used. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a person who saw Hashem, Moshe, his reality was so different to ours. Moshe Rabbeinu felt closer to the spiritual than he did to the physical. He felt closer to heavens, to the heaven, to the non-physical, the intangible, the abstract, than he did to the earth, the material, the physical, the tangible. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Haazinu hashamayim, listen here, close to the heavens, to the spiritual, because to Moshe Rabbeinu that was his comfort zone. That's where he was at in terms of his experience and his awareness. And then when it comes to the tangible, to the material, he says, V'sishma haaretz, hear from far, hear about. Yehoshua, who was his disciple and was an incredible tzaddik, a righteous man and a prophet, a novi, etc., all the good things, he still wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. He was much more a regular human, experientially. And so for Yehoshua, he said, Sishma, distant to the heavens, the spirituality. Yehoshua related much more to... Yes, thank you. Shimu Shamayim, thank you very much. Hear, O heavens, v'hazini aretz, and hearken, listen, however you say it, to the sky, to the ground. Hazini aretz, to the earth, the tangible, because Yehoshua, like us, related much more to the tangible, the material, the physical. You know, it's not a fault or a glitch if we respond more quickly or we relate more readily to ice cream or chocolate cake or a nice cozy bed when we're tired or whatever it is than we do to the idea of an angel or even Hashem. Because it takes a lot of information and effort and energy and process to have any sort of connection to things that are not physical, that are not tangible or material. They are much more distant to us. So Yehoshua, in addressing the heavens, Yehoshua said, Sishma, Shim'u Shamayim. Hear from far, O heavens, because he was much more like where we are. V'hazini aretz, and when he was speaking to the earth, the ground, the tangible, the material, the close, the physical, that was, he said, Haazinu, close. The question becomes, we could ask the question at a couple of layers of resolution, or levels of resolution. One, we could say, well, why do we need both Moshe and Yeshua? If one's correct, why not just that one? But then both of them, why doesn't Moshe Rabbeinu just speak to the heavens and let Yeshua just speak to the earth? If Moshe Rabbeinu relates to the spiritual more than the physical, and Yeshua relates to the physical more than the spiritual, let Moshe Rabbeinu speak to the spiritual, let Yeshua speak to the physical. Why is each of them, you know, if you're running a team or organization, a company, whatever it is, and you have someone who's really good at sales, like incredible at sales and not much good at anything else, and you have someone else who's incredible at organizing and not much good at anything else, it's not very productive or logical to make each of them do both kinds of work. If someone is incredible at sales and not much good at anything else, let them spend every minute at work on sales. And if someone's amazing at organizing and not much good at anything else, let them spend all their time organizing. Let them be the person who does the organizing. So why don't we have Moshe Rabbeinu just all in the heavens, Yeshua all in the ground, all in the earth, Moshe Rabbeinu all in the spiritual, Yeshua all in the material, the tangible? That seems like a much, much more efficient and effective approach than making each of them be involved in both. And the answer is that the differeces between the metaphor or the equivalent that I gave, which is, let's say, in a business or a team or an organization, a project, whatever it is, there's an objective. The value lies in achieving the objective, the thing you're trying to do, create, produce, make happen, whatever it is. And the more efficient and effective the process of getting there, the better. Every one of us is here, every single person exists, not just as a part of the collective team, all of which are working together towards an objective. That's true, that is a true part of the picture, but that's not all of it. Every single one of us also has our own individual journey and our own individual project and picture. And what is the project? What's the ultimate objective? Or where does the ultimate value lie? The ultimate value lies in, right, let's say Moshe and Yeshua are having a debate, which they wouldn't have done. They wouldn't have had a debate like this. But let's say we have someone like Moshe Rabbeinu who really relates to the spiritual and someone like Yeshua who really relates to the physical. And they're debating and they're arguing about which one's more important, which one's better, which one should we focus on. If either of them was right and the other one was wrong, that would mean that Hashem messed up when he created everything because chas v'shalom, because that would mean that he created something that's inferior or not as valuable. And why would you do that if you could just put everything into the thing that's more valuable? The ultimate value lies in the integration and the synthesis of the two together. Spirituality on its own as just spirituality in isolation, I mean, it has value, it exists, and there's lots of valuable things about it, but that on its own is completely removed from the ultimate value and objective and the thing that is the most valuable. And material, physical, tangible on its own, equally distant from the ultimate real value. The value is the thing that Hashem wanted and wants, and the reason that everything exists is so that the spiritual and the physical, the physical and the non-physical, the tangible and the abstract can come together and be integrated into each other. This is why every single one of us has, let's say, a shamayim and a aretz. There's a heaven equivalent component of a person and the earth equivalent component of a person. We have a body and we have divinity inside of us. Neither of them would have had to come into this world to just be on its own, to do things on its own. There's no value, there's no change, there's nothing produced. Our physical, tangible body, our earth, our ground, and our heaven, the divinity inside of us, come into this world together in partnership so that they can be integrated, so that our soul can express itself in our body and through our body, and we can live a physical, tangible life as a productive, healthy, responsible human being. And in every single part of that, the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we breathe, the way we think, the way we eat, the way we sleep, if every part of that is done as a part of our service to Hashem, as a part of our journey in making this world a dwelling place for Hashem, integrating divinity into the material, then, and this connects to what we were talking about last week, then that sleeping and that eating and maybe that recreation and that fun and that thing we did because we were going to really enjoy it and it just felt like it was the right thing for us in that moment and that time for the right reason, then all of those things have become a truly integrated physical, spiritual composite. And the more we can have of both, the greater the composite, right? In chemistry, I'll get to your question, but in chemistry, when if someone tells you, I remember doing this in high school, they would say you have this amount of, hydrogen and this amount of oxygen, how much water are you going to get? If you combine the H2 and the O2, how much H2O do you get? And you have to figure out, you have to look at H2O, look at what's the ratio of hydrogen to oxygen in water, and then come back to the hydrogen and the oxygen that you have and see it's called the limiting reagent. One of them is going to run out before the other one, and if you have enough oxygen to use up all the hydrogen, then the hydrogen is the limiting reagent. Once the hydrogen is used up, you're going to have leftover oxygen. You can't make water with oxygen if there's no more hydrogen left. It got all used up. If we have lots and lots and lots and lots of tangible material, but the spiritual runs out, then a lot of that is going to be left over. If we have lots and lots of spiritual and the material runs out, then that's going to be left over. The more we can have a balance of both, the more we're going to be producing the desired outcome, the more we're going to be doing what we're really here to do. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody should be Yeshua and nobody should be Moshe Rabbeinu, that we should all have, we're not all supposed to be born with this natural balance of, I feel exactly one arm and leg in spirituality and one in the tangible, and we bring it together perfect. That's not reality. Everybody knows that's not reality, and if it's not reality, it's not supposed to be reality. If it was supposed to be, it would be. Right? There are some people who are much more at home in the spiritual, in the abstract, which means that for them, that's, let's say, maybe the place that they're primarily connected to. All that means is all the more important that they make sure to also focus on the tangible, on the material, so that that spirituality can go somewhere and do something and be integrated into this world. And the person who relates to and enjoys and has a very strong connection and relationship and appreciation for the tangible and the material has to be putting in their energy into connecting to the spiritual and the divine so that they can channel it back into that physical. Neither of them is right or wrong. Everybody is here to be integrating the two together. The question is, which one do I naturally relate to more? And therefore, what is the other that I have to focus on making sure to incorporate so that we can have the integration of the two, which is where the ultimate value lies. So Moshe was on, let's say, on first name basis, or felt that proximity and closeness to the heavens, that doesn't mean that Moshe just focuses on the spirituality and neglects the tangible. He has to do that too. And it's in that bringing the two together that the integration happens, which is the whole point of everything. But another thing to notice here, that Moshe does say Haazinu to the heavens. And Yeshua does say Haazini Oretz, to the tangible, the material. Trying to convince ourselves or to run away and pretend that we're something we're not. And, I really just I get ice cream and cars and clothes, and I wish I was just more into spirituality and I related to that more. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If it's an aspiration that we work towards, i.e. developing our appreciation for spirituality, which is the direction that we should be moving in, not because we want to run away from the tangible material. We can have a very deeply integrated life and relationship with the physical and the material without it being materialistic. Yes, it's true that we don't want to be materialistic, which means we don't want to be interested in and focused on and pursuing material for the materialism's sake. But the material is not a bad thing at all. It's here, and it's a very important part of the picture. And even Moshe Rabbeinu, who was all about the spirituality in the heavens, he also had to have the ground, the earth, the tangible in the picture. And for the person who relates to the tangible, also has to pursue the spiritual and try to integrate them. And if Moshe would have, said, Shimu Shamayim v'Haazini Oretz, because he was like, oh, Yeshua said that, yeah, it's all we should be more focused on the physical. And if Yeshua said Haazinu Shamayim v'Sishma Haaretz, because he wanted to be more spiritual like Moshe Rabbeinu, both of them are going to be working against their nature, working against the structure that Hashem designed them with, and are going to be doing a less effective job. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing that we need to run away from in terms of our nature. Doesn't mean that everything we feel like doing is what we should be doing. But if we feel a natural tendency towards something, not being afraid of that, but rather looking is there a way to take this and to integrate divinity into it. Now, if we feel a tendency or a pull towards something that is halachically prohibited, that's a different conversation. But if a person, let's say, really, really enjoys good food, and by denying themselves that food, they're going to really be like, and it's going to be this ongoing battle, and they can either fight themselves and aspire to be someone who doesn't appreciate the taste and the culinary experience, the sensory experience of eating good food, or they can do that number one, eat the food that they want and enjoy it and take that energy and the emotional fulfillment or wellness that they feel as a result and put all of that energy and wellness into Torah and mitzvahs and integrating spirituality and material. And even if a person wants to be less materialistic, right? Let's say a person says, I don't want to be involved in the material. So what I'm sitting at the table, that ice cream looks like really good, that chocolate cake looks really good, that whatever it is. That food looks really good. Now, in reality, let's say it's an oversimplification, but let's say the two options are, I eat it, or I fight myself and I don't eat it. Realistically, which one of those two people, if we have two people who have the same desire for the food, one eats it and one doesn't, which one is more likely to have that food on their mind 10 minutes later and 12 hours later and tomorrow? The one who didn't eat it. So the one who denied themselves the food realistically is much more likely to if you will look over the course of the next hour, day, week, month, year, there's going to be a lot more materialism net in their experience than the other person's experience. They wanted the food, they ate it, they moved on, they forgot, they don't even remember. And the other person, maybe partly consciously, partly subconsciously, but their body's like, oh, that food, I really wanted that ice cream, I really wanted that chocolate cake. And what happens? Sometimes they end up binging on something else 2 days later because their body's still fighting and it still wanted that thing and it still doesn't hit the spot because they would have just eaten the thing, it would have hit the spot. So the person who's denying themselves the food is actually, in the bigger picture, being a lot more materialistic and a lot more involved in the material. So Moshe Rabbeinu had this clarity that he is closer to the spiritual and further from the material. Yeshua had the clarity that he was closer to the material and further from the spiritual. They both made sure to address and include both, so both could be integrated. but they weren't afraid of acknowledging and being aware of what their nature was, and then the approach that makes sense for them, who they are. And ultimately, I think it's very much the case that the person who fights themselves on the food is less likely to end up truly not caring about that food down the road. And the person who just sees the food, it doesn't mean that we have to eat everything we see, right? Sometimes it can be like, that looks really good. You know what? I don't need to eat it, and move on. And that's a good thing. Most of the time, probably for most of the foods that exist today, it's much better for our health. It's better for our probably, spiritual well-being if we're up to it. But if it's not, you know what, I don't really need that, it would be better to not eat it and move on and forget about it, but I'm going to be fighting myself over it. We're just going to end up in this lifelong fight with this food. Whereas if we see it and it's like, I really, really want that, if I don't eat it, I'm going to be fighting myself on it. Eat it, and your body's much more likely to just move on and not be so worried about it anymore much sooner. So now the person in that instance, for example, could look at the food and say, I should be more spiritual, I shouldn't want the food, right? Accept, I want the food. If Hashem wanted me to not really want this food, I wouldn't really want it. Does that mean I have to eat it? Not necessarily, that's a separate question. But number one is, don't feel guilty and feel like it's a bad thing that I want the food, because that literally means I think Hashem made a mistake, which is effectively equivalent of idolatry. And then the next step is, once it's, okay, I want it, I'm supposed to want it, it's perfectly fine that I want it. Would it be better not to eat it maybe on some level? And if I cannot eat it and it's fine, that might be a good thing. But if I'm going to be fighting myself, be okay with that. Accept it, and not only just accept it, but if you accept it and then say, okay, so if I'm Yeshua and I'm closer to the ground, I'm closer to the chocolate cake than the spirituality. Yeshua didn't just address the earth, he did address the heavens. He addressed the heavens in the context of knowing that he was more closely connected to the earth. So then the question becomes, okay, so if I feel like, honestly, I'm just better off eating this than not eating it, can I eat it and just spend 30 seconds before I eat it acknowledging that I'm allowing myself to eat it and it's gonna help me feel better? And is there a way that I can then take that wellness, that feeling better, that energy, that all the positive things that are going to come from that, and do something productive with it, channel it into, I'm going to feel better, I'm going to make a point to try and do 2 minutes of Torah study afterwards, or to do an extra mitzvah, just, I'm eating this, I'm enjoying it. Let me make this a beautiful part of my experience and of my journey in serving Hashem and integrating divinity in the world. And it does make me feel better as a result of eating it. Let me take that energy, that motivation, that wellness, and put it into a positive thing. And then we have both coming together. Whereas if we're denying that and saying, well, I really want to be Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to be closer to the heaven and further than the earth, we're just fighting ourselves, which is ultimately going to lead to less rather than more. And just the way that ties back into what we were talking about before is the same thing. When we come to davening and accept the fact that we are physical human beings, we're supposed to be in bodies, and we all have learnt this and know it. And I think there's a very big gap, and it's something that a lot of people have a fear of, really believing in the things that we learn in the books, that it's really, really real, like for us, not just something that we're supposed to tell people in speeches and classes and lectures, that it's all about using the soul and the body together as a team, and they should both be healthy and they should both be participating together as a team. The more we can set things up so that we are working with our body instead of against it, the more integrated things are, the greater the extent we're making a dir b'tachtonim, because everything we do is more deeply integrated into our body, and that's the objective of it all. So if taking 5 minutes before we daven to really connect with our bodies, at the end of the day, we're people, and every experience that we have through the body. It's the soul, but it's the soul in partnership with the body. So then let's think about how we can integrate the two and get the two working together both as effectively as possible. And when a person takes 5 minutes to set up their breath and to connect to their body before they daven, every breath and every thought and every part of that experience is a part of their davening journey and is a integration of the tangible, the physical, and the spiritual. It's the integration of their body and their soul, of the physical experience and the divinity that they are integrating into it by means of preparing themselves to daven. You got a question? What's more of a reason than that? What is more important? Even if before we get to like morality and the spirituality and the purpose, halachically, what takes priority over health and safety in halacha? 0 things. Well, not 0, but very close to 0, right? Out of all the mitzvahs, there are, 99.5% of the mitzvahs take a back seat to health and safety.
So do you always have to know how an action is serving Hashem in order to do it?
Well, if it's contributing towards your health and or safety and or well-being, it's serving Hashem by definition, because it's a mitzvah to protect and maintain our health and safety.
But would it be a good goal to have, to see more deeply how your actions in above just taking care of you for the immediate, being okay, how that is ultimately serving your relationship with Hashem?
I would say it's a worthy goal, but it's much less of an important goal than actually doing the things that are going to help us feel better. So the person who's like, oh, you know what, I know that when I do this, I feel better, I feel more settled, everything's just smoother and just life is better. But I really want to understand how that's part of my avodas Hashem, and then I'll do it. That's the mistake, right? The correct way of approaching it is, this is helping my health and wellness and well-being and all of those things, which means it's a good thing and I should do it. I also want to try to understand more about exactly how this ties in. That's a worthy goal, but it naseh v'nishma, right? We will do and then we will listen. If this is contributing towards your health and well-being and setting you up to just be better off and everything is better as a result, do it and then try to understand it as well. But to delay things, and what happens actually ironically is the more I just want to understand it first, the more we end up not understanding it because we're not settled enough to actually do it and we're running away to other things, and then we end up both not understanding it and not doing it.